Okay, let's dive right into this explainer and unpack some truly startling disclosures from May 2026 regarding the Jeffrey Epstein investigation. For years, pretty much everyone thought we had the complete picture of what went down inside the Metropolitan Correctional Center. But boom, a massive new revelation by the New York Times just completely upended the official narrative. They brought to light a totally unknown piece of evidence, and honestly, it kind of changes everything.
Let's start right in the middle of the mystery with this incredibly jarring, purported suicide note. This thing was hidden from us for 7 years. It was tucked away in court records, scribbled on a torn scrap of a yellow legal pad, and it concludes with this really chilling sign-off: time to say goodbye, literally complete with a little drawn smiley face. It's defiant, it's petulant even, claiming federal investigators basically found nothing. But you've got to wonder, how does a document like this just vanish from literally one of the most high-profile investigations in modern history?
Let's move into part one, the Cell 5 discovery.
To understand how this crucial piece of evidence fell through the cracks, we really need to look at this highly compressed timeline. Back on July 23rd, Epstein was found semi-conscious with neck injuries. Between that initial event and July 27th, after he'd been moved, his cellmate discovered the note. Barely 2 weeks later, on August 10th, Epstein was dead. This timeline is just incredibly tight, and honestly, the circumstances around how this note was found are even stranger.
Just think about this contrast for a second. The alleged architect of a massive global sex trafficking ring leaving his final defiant words hidden inside a jailhouse graphic novel. His cellmate claimed he found this yellow scrap of paper just by opening the book to read it while sorting through the mundane stuff left behind in the cell. It's wild, right? It immediately sets a completely bizarre tone for this whole investigation.
Which brings us to part two, the unlikely custodian.
Now, the reliability of this entire story really hinges on the guy sharing that cell. And it's incredibly jarring to realize that the most high-profile defendant in the world was bunking with Nicholas Tartaglione. He's a former police officer who was waiting for his own capital murder trial and is now serving 4 life sentences for quadruple homicide. Jail records actually show Epstein was terrified of the guy, claiming the ex-cop was threatening him for protection money. Yet Tartaglione's lawyers insist the two were totally cordial. Legal analysts have called putting these two together absolutely reckless, and it's pretty easy to see why.
So fearing for his own capital case because Epstein had initially claimed he was assaulted, Tartaglione's lawyers needed proof of Epstein's suicidal mindset to clear their client's name. They get the note authenticated and quickly maneuver to submit it to a federal courthouse in White Plains, where a judge seals it. And just like that, poof, the most important piece of evidence vanishes right into a judicial vault, entirely bypassing the Justice Department's investigators. No public scrutiny, no DOJ access.
Moving on to part three, analyzing the two notes. When we compare the physical evidence side by side, we get 2 totally different snapshots of his mindset. Look at the stark contrast here. You've got the petulant, defiant tone of the July note on one hand, but on the other hand, the August note, which everyone already knew about, is just filled with mundane environmental complaints about burnt food and giant bugs crawling on his hands. This newly revealed July yellow pad note is a completely different beast. It directly references the investigation and points to a much earlier contemplation of his exit. If this July note is the real deal, it suggests a sustained suicidal intent that the prison staff somehow entirely missed when they took him off suicide watch. It really throws a wrench into the theory that his death was just a sudden, impulsive reaction to his cellmate being transferred on August 9th. It points to a clear, pre-existing state of mind. And that's not just fancy psychological jargon, it's the exact detail that makes the facility's failure to monitor him so unbelievably egregious. Now, we have to remain perfectly impartial here. While this newly revealed note absolutely supports the official suicide ruling made by Dr. Barbara Sampson, independent pathologists are pointing to forensic anomalies that keep this debate very much alive. Dr. Michael Baden noted things like a broken hyoid bone and burst capillaries on Epstein's face. Statistically speaking, those are pretty rare in hangings and much more common in homicidal strangulation. Combine that with a weird lack of standard scene photographs and, well, even with the new note, those physical anomalies ensure the questions aren't going away anytime soon.
All right, part 4, architecture of institutional failure. We need to zoom out from Cell 5 for a second, because this missing note is just one piece of a massive puzzle. The Inspector General's report laid out this literal perfect storm of blunders. We're talking guards falling asleep on the job, nearly all the security cameras in the unit completely failing to record, guards blatantly falsifying their 30-minute check logs, And to top it off, because the jail couldn't maintain a clean chain of custody, defense lawyers were able to just scoop up and remove the suicide note themselves. Add in a pervasive culture of silence among the staff, and you've got a recipe for total systemic collapse. So here is the absolutely crucial takeaway. Epstein was left completely unmonitored for nearly 8 hours in a cell filled with excess linens. The psychological department had explicitly stated he needed a cellmate, yet they transferred a cellmate the day prior. This 8-hour window of total, unbelievable systemic failure provided the exact opportunity foreshadowed by that hidden July note.
Let's jump to part 5, the 2026 transparency paradox.
Fast forward to early 2026. Despite this massive legislative push for truth via the Epstein Files Transparency Act, we hit a brick wall. A truly staggering volume of redacted documents, videos, and images was dumped onto the public. Over 3.5 million pages in what journalists dubbed the Jan 30 dump. It had everything from inner circle diagrams to old correspondence, but it was widely slammed as a black box release, just totally disorganized, full of duplicates, and missing any real coherent timeline. Which leads to the biggest question of all. How on earth does the most critical piece of forensic evidence completely bypass the largest data release in the history of the case? I mean, how does a law specifically designed to force total transparency manage to miss the primary defendant's actual suicide note? Well, the answer lies in a giant jurisdictional loophole. Just 5 days after Epstein's arrest, the FBI issued a strict stand-down directive to the NYPD, demanding that all information flow exclusively through federal channels. Why does that matter to us? Because the transparency law only applied to DOJ records. That means the note, which was safely tucked away by Judge Carres in a state courthouse vault, was legally completely exempt from the massive data dump. With all of that context, it's really no wonder that in 2026, public skepticism remains sky high. Just look at the numbers. Only 16% of Americans actually believe the official narrative that Epstein died by suicide. Between the slow trickle of information, the heavily redacted files, and the fact that federal investigators never even laid eyes on this July note, it all just heavily fuels public doubt. And that brings us right up to today. Journalists are actively and legally demanding Judge Carres release this document in the public interest. The New York Times petition argues that keeping secrets in a case causing this much political division is just unacceptable. They want this artifact pulled out of the White Plains vault and put squarely into the public eye, hoping it'll finally help contextualize the final days of a figure who caused so much harm. So as we wrap up this explainer, I want you to consider something. In our digital age with truth so fragmented, will the survivors ever truly see full accountability? We're talking about a scrap of yellow paper hidden in a graphic novel, moved by a quadruple murderer and sealed away by a judge. If it's finally released, will it answer our questions, or will it just prove how deeply broken the system was that held him? That's the real takeaway here. Sometimes the evidence we find only highlights the vastness of what we still don't know. Thanks for joining me on this explainer. Keep asking those hard questions, and I'll catch you next time.
An investment in knowledge pays the best interest, so why not invest in this channel? Click like and subscribe for more.